Good morning. This is the editor's desk, and I'm here with Matt Keys. Matt, how are you?
Doing well this morning, Rick. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, and we have some interesting stuff to talk about. But first, I think you want to give a plug to the TV of Tomorrow show, yeah?
Yeah, in our pre-show, we were talking about our hotel arrangements and flight arrangements, and for me, I'll probably be taking the train in. The TV of Tomorrow show was announced a couple of weeks ago, and Tracy Swedlow and I have been emailing back and forth, trying to get some things in order as far as the bio and the headshot goes. Rick and I will both be doing a panel. I believe we're doing a panel together, right?
We are doing a panel together, which when you're done pitching, I'll describe the panel.
Yeah, and I wasn't going to get too much into it because the schedule I don't think has been announced yet. In fact, I just emailed her a question about that this morning. But it is coming at some point. Now's a really good time to start thinking about attending. So I don't know what the website is offhand, but if you go to thedesk.net/TVOT, we will have a link to the TV of Tomorrow show where you can see photos from last year. Rick and I were both at last year's show. You can get, I believe they have the speaker schedule there for last year's show, so you kind of get an idea.
And they have the speakers for this year, but not yet have. And by the way, it's real simple. It's itvt.com.
There you go.
It's Tracy's homepage. itvt.com takes you right in there.
And we do a bunch of promotion on the desk.net for TVOT, so I'm sure you'll start seeing those banners and promotional cube ads start to appear in the stories and on the homepage. We always offer them a little bit of promotional space too, because it's a fantastic show. If it separates itself from all of the other industry shows, and I know there's a lot of them. I've been clued in over the last 2 years just how many industry shows there are and how many conferences there are. There's quite a few of them, but this one really stands apart because you can't always grab someone's ear after a panel, right? A lot of times people are moving on to the next thing. At TVOT, it's a very intimate setting. If you want to go longer with someone, I'll tell you, last year, I wound up doing an interview with somebody at TVOT, and we wound up talking for a good 4 or 5 hours. Now, that's not common, but that gives you kind of an idea of once you get going, you can really spend all afternoon talking with one person or a group of people. Yeah. That's how, but on the other hand, if you want to attend panels and interviews and learn as much as you can about what's going to take place in the TV space within the next 3, 5, 10 years, this is the show you want to be at to do it. It takes place at a beautiful venue. It's the General's residence in San Francisco. If you want to attend a conference with a view, let me tell you something. You're not going to get it in Vegas. You're not going to get it in Denver. You're not going to get it in New York. This is the one you want to go to. So that's all I'll say about this year's show.
Because I'm gonna add 2 things to that. Number one is I've been doing her show, good heavens, now for about 14 years. And I love the fact that you can get to the people, similar to what you said. You can get to the people that you've been trying to get to without benefit of making an appointment or digging through their personal assistant or their Google Calendar.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
They're just up there getting a donut between sessions, and you say, howdy, I need to talk to you about this, and you're off to the races. Okay, the one thing, Matt and I are going to be on a panel with some other folks, some other industry analysts. It's going to be sort of the super group of the television business, and we are going to discuss the world of mergers and acquisitions for about the next 18 months. Who must merge? Who must acquire? Who must be acquired? And who's going to get left out there in the cold? It's going to be a really interesting session.
And I believe this is the first session that's actually been announced. So
I just announced it.
Pays to watch this show.
Okay. You want to talk about, speaking of somebody who must acquire or must not acquire, this is probably somebody who doesn't fit into either category, and that's YouTube, and notably YouTube TV. So what's your perspective? And are you talking about YouTube or are you talking about YouTube TV?
So it's kind of all encompassing,
okay.
Right? And let me preface how this. Let me set up how this conversation came about, how this idea for a conversation came about. Rick and I are very active on LinkedIn. It has become a social media platform that I have leaned into over the past couple of years. A lot of really interesting people on there, a lot of interesting conversations. And Evan Shapiro, who is very well known.
Shapiro.
It's good to know that because I have.
That's why he has
this week.
The
accent
long
mark.
I sign over the I. Yeah.
Got it. It's good to know because I'm interviewing Evan this week.
You probably want to spell his name correct. Pronounce it correct.
Well, no, I'll spell his name correctly. It's a matter of pronouncing it.
He will appreciate you pronouncing it correctly.
So hopefully Evan's not watching that part of the show. Maybe I'll just edit that part out. So Evan, we're going to be chatting at some point this week, not about the topic that we're going to talk about today, but he does a podcast with Marion Ranchet. Is that how you pronounce her name?
That I don't know.
Butchering everybody's name today.
I don't know her personally,
but they posted a clip on LinkedIn, a choose your fighter type clip with pretty vague question, which is YouTube considered TV?
Mm-hmm.
And this generated some pretty interesting dialogue in the comments section, of which I participated in. And I thought that could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I don't know that we're definitely going to have a position on this. I don't know that we're going to be able to suss out everything in 20 to 30 minutes. But the idea of, is YouTube considered TV, I think is really interesting. If you approach the folks at Nielsen, they clearly consider YouTube to be part of TV because they rank YouTube with all of the apps and against broadcasting cable and traditional TV. If you talk to some of the people who have worked in the television industry for a while, and even some people who work in the television industry now that maybe haven't been in it for quite a while, the fact that YouTube doesn't have the same system of gatekeepers, the traditional form of delivery, disqualifies it from being television, but not necessarily a player in the video space. They see YouTube as more of its own thing. And I went, okay, there's many different ways that we can approach this, but I'll just ask you this, Rick. Do you think that YouTube is TV?
Okay. Well, before I do that, I do have to ask you to do me a favor. When you get Evan Shapiro on camera, ask him how he gets his hair to do that. I've tried. Admittedly, I don't have enough hair, which is why I wear a hat. Okay. Is YouTube TV? When we were warming up, I pointed out that in the early days of cable, I was there, there were folks at, as a matter of fact, some folks at ABC or NBC or CBS actually made the statement, if cable TV ever becomes a threat to network TV, we'll own it. That was his perspective. That cable wasn't really TV. It was this thing. And then when satellite came along, it was, well, satellite isn't really TV because it's not cable or over the air. And my attitude about YouTube is that it's nothing more than a platform. I mean, fact of the matter is, they don't do a whole lot of originals with the exception of the stuff that they pick up from creators, which you could argue is originals because it's stuff that for the most part is available on YouTube, but now on Instagram and TikTok. But it's not like, for example, NBC and Law and Order. Now, Law and Order is made by another studio. I think it's actually a Warner. But NBC has Law and Order, and that is classically considered to be TV, right? Now, I can watch Law and Order on cable. I can watch Law and Order online. I can watch Law and Order on Peacock. Actually, at any given time of the day, there's an episode of Law and Order running someplace in syndication or streaming or all the rest of it. There's no question that Law and Order is TV, but when I'm watching it on Peacock, is that TV? Well, the show is. And does anything really matter more than the show? So my attitude about the question of is YouTube TV, I'd say, who the F cares?
Oh, there seem to be people in the industry that care a lot about whether YouTube is considered TV or not. And and from different approaches too. You brought up one, which is the delivery mechanism by which the video gets to you. If Law and Order is considered a TV show and NBC is considered a TV network, then what is Peacock? Is it an app? Is it a platform? Is it a connected TV platform? And then in the same vein, okay, well, what is YouTube? YouTube tried to make its own original programming. They had this thing called YouTube Red a few years ago. Didn't pan out very well for them. I think what YouTube realized pretty quickly is that their strength is in providing a platform where anybody can create content, anybody can push it out, and the winners and losers are chosen by the viewers.
Yep.
For better or for worse. I mean, YouTube has also been linked to, on the worst end of things like the spread of misinformation, which is something that I know that they're trying to tackle. Is YouTube a news platform? I mean, there's conversations that could be had about that. I think my take on this is that, it's not so much YouTube evolving into TV, it's TV evolving into other things, right? TV has always just been a medium. And it was a little bit easier to define what that medium was when you had 3 networks. And then in our pre-show, we brought up cable as an example. All of a sudden, cable came on the market. And for a while, it was a way to repackage and repurpose reruns and licensed movies, and then cable started to produce its own programming, which was okay for a while, and then really became quite premium and entered into pop culture. But the hesitancy on the legacy side was, and I brought up the awards ceremonies as a great example. The Emmys, if you had a cable program, you couldn't enter into the Emmys for the longest time, to the point where they had their own awards ceremony, which was
the ACE Awards, which was a whole lot of who the heck cares? Yes.
Well, the cable industry really cared. They felt they felt like they were not being, especially the producers were not being acknowledged for the programming that they were putting out. So they created their own awards show. And then the cable programming got too big to ignore, and suddenly they were invited into the fold. Now you've got broadcasting cable fighting the connected TV platforms while also contributing to it with services like YouTube TV, right? Is YouTube TV considered cable TV? Well, it sure resembles cable TV, but the lines are getting so increasingly blurred that I think the better conversation to have is, what is TV these days? It's not so much as YouTube TV. If you're watching YouTube on your TV, you're watching the same kind of video programming that you might get from somewhere else. How it's created and how it's delivered may have changed because there's no gatekeeper standing in the way of. YouTube is essentially the gatekeeper, and it's only limited by the technology. If you've got a phone and editing software, or even if you don't have editing software, if you just have a phone or something with a camera and an internet connection and a way to get the video out, you can create content. And we've seen content creators create some really interesting content with low budgets and not a lot of equipment. And frankly, some of those get more eyeballs than stuff you might see on. I think the comment that I left on LinkedIn was something to the effect of, if we're judging traditional as more valuable compared to these emerging platforms as less valuable, I think that is not where the winners and losers are chosen, because there are people with television shows and AM radio shows today that draw a smaller audience than people who are publishing to YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok.
Absolutely.
Now, if you're an advertiser, where do you go?
I want to go where the eyeballs are.
Okay.
I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to, have a shareholder and say, I saw your ad next to this other disgusting thing on YouTube. So I got to guard against that. I want to get my product in front of the eyeballs to get my brand out there and to sell Charmin. That's it. That's all.
So if you're Procter and Gamble,
yep.
right, and you're looking for the biggest audience, the biggest reach, and one that's going to be brand safe, I think there's an argument to be made that you still get that from traditional, what we'll call traditional television, broadcasting, cable. For the most part, it's brand safe. I mean, there are areas where you can stray into where it's not brand safe, but for the most part, it's brand safe. It has an audience. It has reach. YouTube, you never really quite know what you're going to get.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. Okay, but let me take it another way, which is, I think the real answer is TV is in the eye of the beholder. I mentioned that my daughter-in-law has YouTube TV at home that they play on the big screen in the living room and downstairs in the den. I asked her, does she watch TV? She said, no, I watch my phone. Mm-hmm. Now, what's she watching on her phone? Law and Order on her phone. Okay. A classic as it could be TV show that's being watched on another device. I think the more meaningful argument that applies to the content itself and to the advertising is what device I'm watching it on. For example, if I am watching and engaged in a program on a 40, however big the screen is, actually more than that now, a 60-inch screen here in my office, I am likely to be accepting or paying attention to the advertising in a different way. Not better, but in a different way than if I'm watching that same program on the train on my phone. It is where the consumer is viewing, which generally will tend to be on the best screen available, but where the consumer is viewing and how that impacts the consumer experience, I think that has the real meaning. If consumers say I'm watching TV, and they simply mean I'm watching that big thing, I think that's fine, and that's a legitimate definition that both programmers and distributors can use, and absolutely advertisers can use, because the experience is different. That's where I come out.
I tend to agree. I think that there, two quick things here. I think that the definition of television matters more to certain people than it does to others, right? I think is the overall point that we both can make on this. If you're an advertiser, you clearly have a definition of of television in your mind, and so if you're an advertiser and you're looking at TV, what is TV and what is not TV very much makes a difference. If you're a content creator, I don't know that it makes that much of a difference anymore. And who it really doesn't make a difference to is the viewer, because viewers, I believe, just see everything as video these days. The lines are so blurred between apps and platforms and ways that video gets to you that at the end of the day, if they want to be entertained, if consumers want to be entertained, and their form of entertainment in any given hour is Law and Order, maybe they'll watch on their TV if their TV happens to be in front of them, or if they're watching with other people. Certainly, It's probably one of the best ways to watch sports is on the biggest screen in the house. But if you're watching something like Law and Order, or your favorite YouTube creator, and the TV happens to be next to you or in your office, you might watch it on that. But if you're in bed and you're just looking for something to watch before you fall asleep, you might watch it on your phone, as I do before I go to sleep more nights than not. I'm really trying to not watch video and TV on my phone. I'm really trying to, I have so many Kindle books that I need to get through. Yeah. And it tends to be a much better way to try to get to sleep at night if you're trying to if you read a book over watching a video or using any kind of phone or similar device. But I think overall to the consumer, they just see it all as video. The consumers, I think, are getting frustrated by the fact that as the landscape gets fractured, they're having to take different apps, different services to get access to all of the video that they want. And that's going to be a topic that we discuss probably next week.
Yep.
Because we had two topics that we floated in our pre-show, and this just happened to be the one that we landed on. But I think to consumers, they're so frustrated by the fact that they have to have X service and Y service, X app and Y app, to be able to access all of the video that they want. And if there's a show or a movie or a creator that they want access to and they don't have that app, they have to go out and get it or find a way to get access to that video. So I understand why the advertisers and the content creators and certain experts within our industry want to have the discussion about, is YouTube TV or not? And I think that those are the people who very much want to pick the winners and losers in the space and have an idea of who the winners and losers are. I don't know where YouTube falls on that side of things. And I don't even think that the people at Google and YouTube really care
what
that argument is, because when you generate $10 billion in ad revenue in a quarter, I think that really speaks for itself. And I'm sure there are TV networks that would kill to have, a fourth of that right now. And frankly, I think that speaks for itself, that, YouTube is as a platform where there are so few gatekeepers, but it enables so much creative content that is where the viewers are going. And so maybe the conversation shouldn't be what is or isn't video. I think what's going to push the industry in a really good direction is when they start saying, let's look at what all of these platforms are doing, and let's take the best approaches from each one without compromising what our brand identity is, without compromising what our history is. Let's see if we can incorporate some of these elements and maybe get a leg up over these people that are having this conversation over, trying to pigeonhole different elements of the video ecosystem and label them.
I get that. All right. Well, one thing I do want to point out is over here, one of my sponsors is Sabio, and they have, and this is very germane actually, a new service they've created called Creator Television, where they are taking YouTube and TikTok and Instagram content creators and bundling a bunch of their library shows together and putting them into a television channel. And it comes down to something that I observed last year at Tracy Swedlow's conference, is that those creators who are existing out there in the digital world want nothing more than to be on TV. That is for them arriving. Now, if they jump from the YouTube, everything can get on their platform, over to YouTube TV, where their parents can watch it on the big screen. Okay. Does that count? I think it comes down to the show, and absolutely comes down to where the viewer is watching it. I think that is the defining factor of the consumer experience. And
I think creator TV is such an interesting idea. We've seen this play out a few times in the FAST space. There's this great channel on Samsung and Plex, and I'm going to Google it because I want to make sure I get it right. It's called Animation Plus, and they've basically done the same, not the same thing. They've done something very similar to what Creator TV has done. I think Creator TV is probably more broad than what Animation Plus is. As the name implies, it's just animation. But they've gone to different YouTube creators that have cartoon series on YouTube, and not just on YouTube, but elsewhere. And some of this content is pretty old, but packaged together in a half hour and run alongside ads, it actually works really, really well. And I think what Creator TV has done is taken that concept and really accelerated it to see, okay, well, can creator-driven content exist in a linear TV format? And I'm frankly surprised that nobody has thought of this sooner. But I would caution content creators in this respect. As somebody who is the publisher of a website, an independent publisher, I mean, you could argue that I'm a content creator in a sense, although I tend to present myself more as a journalist because it's content created within certain frameworks. I very much understand the idea of looking toward a legacy platform as being how you can describe yourself as making it or not making it.
There's a certain legitimacy from that.
It's certainly nice to be recognized. Last week, CNN's Brian Stelter put one of the articles that I wrote linked to it in his newsletter.
Yep.
Somehow I just triggered Siri. Brian Stelter put one of my articles in his newsletter and linked to it. That's nice. And I think 5 or 10 years ago, I would have gotten pretty excited about that. But what excites me now is when I have a reader that emails me or talks to me over LinkedIn or talks to me over a social media platform and said, I really liked this story, or I really didn't like this take for this reason, and this reason. To me, that is more valuable as currency to be able to have that kind of engagement. The ad dollars usually follow thereafter. And at the end of the day, to me, as a content creator and as a publisher, $1 from somebody who wants to advertise against me versus $1 against somebody who wants to advertise against a legacy media, it's the same dollar. It has the same buying power. And I would say to those content creators that are so worried about being on TV, if that's your goal, that's a terrific goal to have. And certainly you should shoot for that goal. But consider that there are other avenues. And at the end of the day, don't lose sight of your readers, your viewers, your listeners, your audience. That will be that determines whether or not you make it or not. And I think that dives in. Oops. All right. There goes Siri again. I think that dovetails really nicely into, is YouTube TV or not? Maybe the argument, maybe the conversation that should be have is, what is video today? Because there's so many different players and so many different platforms there. Unfortunately, a conversation or a question that we'll have to just kind of leave on the table. I am confident that we did not get to every possible element that we could talk about on this, because there's so many moving parts to that very open-ended question of, is YouTube TV? So
now wait a minute. Simply by definition, because it was you and me talking, we did get to the most important stuff.
Oh, no, I certainly think that we got to the things that were important to us, but right. I know that there are probably people out there that are watching this going, they didn't talk about X, Y, or Z, or I have thoughts on X, Y, or Z. So I would say to you that this works both ways. You can always email us, leave us a comment.
Absolutely.
We will dissect this in a future video. I don't think that we're done talking about this topic just yet. And I don't think that the Evans and the, I don't think that they're done talking about this topic just yet either. And it's going to be really interesting to see on our show, on other podcasts, the ones that we work with very well together, and also at these industry conferences like TVOT in San Francisco, another plug for them, how this develops. And I think this is going to be a conversation that people are going to have for probably another several years to come. So
as we sign off, I'm going to give a plug for the next show, and just think of it this way. In the early days of cable TV, my early days, by the way, in the last century, we used to say that cable TV was recession-proof. And that is partially because it was so damn difficult for a consumer to break the bundle. You subscribe to cable TV, and for the most part, you got everything. And if you didn't like one thing, there's really no way to get out of that one thing. You were stuck with it. You are taking the bundle, and for the most part, that was home entertainment, and that is recession-proof. Premium TV, where I spent my time in Showtime HBO world, was very subject to economy related issues. I mean, in a good economy, we lost 50% of our subscribers every year. 50%, 50% of our subscribers every year, which meant we had to acquire a number equivalent to that just to stay even. I think what's interesting when we look at what's going on right now in this economy with the threat of a recession, that we might find that the bundles of Netflix and of this and of this and of that are more recession proof than any of those channels would be outside the bundle. Okay? So I'm just going to make it up. So that Paramount Plus might have a 7% per month churn on Paramount Plus. But the Paramount Plus subscribers who are down inside a bundle with Peacock and something else might only have a 4 or 5% monthly churn. That there is protection in the bundle. And we're going to dig into that next week because I think that is really important to the economy of the television business right now.
Yeah, a lot has been said about bundles, and we're going to try to hit on a unique angle that I don't think has been really discussed very much. A lot has been made about bundles and how they can help lower churn while saving consumers money. Well, all signs seem to be pointing to an impending recession, and our bundles. What role do bundles play in that? So that's what we'll tackle next week. Again, if we didn't scratch the surface, or we barely scratched the surface on the YouTube thing, if we didn't hit on an element that you think we should discuss, know that we'll be circling back to this topic probably several more times in the coming weeks and months and years. So please send us an email, drop us a comment, let us know what you think, and we will see everybody next week.
Okay. Bye-bye all.